Manny Pacquiao, a name synonymous with boxing greatness, carries a legacy that transcends generations. Born into poverty in Kibaw, Bukidnon, Philippines, Manny's rise from street vendor to world champion is one of the most inspirational stories in the sport's history. From a young age, Pacquiao faced the harsh realities of life, losing his father's support, sleeping on cardboard, and working odd jobs to support his family. He turned to boxing not just as a sport, but as a lifeline. His amateur journey began at the age of 14, and by 16, he turned professional. Nobody could have imagined that this skinny teenager, barely making weight by putting rocks in his pockets, would eventually go on to become the only 8-division world champion in boxing history. Over the years, Pacquiao built a career that blended speed, power, and heart in a way that fans and fighters alike came to admire. His victories over legends like Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, Juan Manuel Marquez, Oscar de la Hoya, and Miguel Cotto etched his name in the annals of history. But what made Pacquiao truly stand out wasn't just his wins, it was the way he fought. Relentless, aggressive, and always respectful, he brought a warrior spirit into every ring he entered. And as he evolved through weight classes, he brought his power with him, a rare trait in boxing. His lightning-fast combinations, footwork, and stamina made him a nightmare for opponents, and his humble demeanor made him a hero for millions. Outside the ring, Pacquiao's political career in the Philippines added another layer to his story, showing that his ambitions were not just personal but national. Now, years after what many thought was his final bout, Manny Pacquiao is making headlines once again. At 45 years old, long past the age most fighters retire, he is stepping back into the spotlight. But this time, he's not chasing belts. He's chasing one last fight, one more moment under the lights, and his opponent is no walk in the park. Enter Mario Barrios, a younger, powerful, and extremely determined fighter with a lot to prove. Barrios hails from San Antonio, Texas, and represents the new generation of boxing talent. His story is also one of perseverance, though different from Pacquiao's. Raised in a working-class family, Barrios started boxing at a young age and quickly made a name for himself in the amateurs. He turned pro in 2013 and steadily climbed the ranks, eventually capturing the WBA, regular, super lightweight title. Barrios is known for his height, reach, and solid boxing fundamentals. At 5 feet 10 inches, he's significantly taller than Pacquiao and uses his jab effectively to control distance. But he's not just a rangy boxer, he carries knockout power and has shown he can fight on the inside when needed. His battles against Gervonta Tank Davis and Keith Thurman put him on the radar of mainstream boxing fans. While he lost those fights, he earned respect for his heart, durability, and willingness to challenge elite opponents. Unlike Pacquiao, who has nothing left to prove, Barrios still has everything to gain. For him, defeating a living legend like Pacquiao could redefine his entire career, catapulting him into superstardom and title contention once again. The announcement of the fight between Pacquiao and Barrios sent shockwaves through the boxing world. Fans were divided. Some were thrilled to see the Pac-Man back, while others expressed concern over his age and the potential risks. Critics pointed to the fact that Pacquiao hasn't fought professionally since his 2021 loss to Yordenis Ugas, questioning whether he can still perform at a high level. Meanwhile, supporters of Barrios saw this as a brilliant move and opportunity for the younger fighter to gain massive exposure and prove himself against one of the all-time greats. Social media exploded with predictions, debates, and nostalgia as the boxing community tried to process what this fight truly meant. As training camps kicked off, footage of Pacquiao hitting the pads and working the bags started making rounds online. Despite his age, the Filipino icon looked sharp, focused, and motivated. His movements weren't as explosive as they were a decade ago, but the fundamentals, the timing, and that signature smile were all still there. In interviews, Pacquiao remained humble yet confident, stating that he wasn't doing this for money or fame, but because he missed the sport and wanted to go out on his own terms. Meanwhile, Barrios appeared calm, respectful, and determined. He acknowledged Pacquiao's greatness but made it clear that he wouldn't let nostalgia cloud his focus. For him, this was a business trip, a chance to make a statement. boxing legends weighed in as well. Sugar Ray Leonard, for example, praised Pacquiao's courage but advised caution. He spoke about the risks involved in coming back at an older age and the importance of timing. Others like Mike Tyson expressed excitement, saying they admired Pacquiao's warrior spirit. Among fans, the reactions were emotional and passionate. Filipino supporters rallied behind their hero, calling this his final song, his last hurrah. Meanwhile, younger fans gravitated toward Barrios, seeing in him the future. The narrative surrounding the fight became richer than just age versus youth. It turned into a philosophical question about legacy, timing, and risk. Can a legend defy Father Time one more time? Or will the new blood rise and send the old guard into retirement for good? In stylistic terms, the fight is fascinating. Pacquiao, with his in-and-out movement, volume punching, and southpaw stance, presents a unique puzzle. Barrios, with his reach, youth, and patient approach, could either exploit Pacquiao's slower reflexes or be overwhelmed by the veteran's relentless offense. As the training camps intensified, so did the narratives from both camps. Reporters embedded in Pacquiao's camp noted that despite his age, his work ethic hadn't changed. He was still waking up before sunrise, running miles with a group of loyal trainees and fans, shadowboxing in the early morning mist, and hitting the gym with the same hunger that once made him a pound-for-pound king. His longtime trainer, Freddie Roach, who has been in his corner for the biggest fights of his life, expressed optimism. He admitted there were natural limitations with age, but emphasized that Pacquiao's experience, ring IQ, and timing were sharper than most fighters a decade younger. Roach also mentioned that Pacquiao had nothing left to prove, and that this fight was more about personal satisfaction and legacy than anything else. On the other hand, Mario Barrios was making every moment of his preparation count. Training under renowned coaches, his camp focused heavily on conditioning, strength, and technical precision. Barrios studied Pacquiao's past fights meticulously, noting the veteran's habits, movements, and patterns. He wasn't just preparing for the best version of Pacquiao, he was preparing for a war. In interviews, Barrios remained grounded and focused. He expressed deep respect for Pacquiao, often calling it an honor to share the ring with him. But beneath that respect was an unmistakable fire. Barrios understood the weight this opportunity carried. A win against Pacquiao would be more than a line on his resume, it would be a defining chapter in his journey. Meanwhile, public interest continued to grow. In the Philippines, the buzz was electric. Local television ran specials on Pacquiao's career, replaying his iconic fights, showcasing interviews with his family, and capturing the mood in General Santos City, his hometown. Across the country, fans prepared to gather in gyms, public plazas, and homes to watch their hero fight once again. Many saw this not just as a boxing match, but as a national event, a chance to relive a golden era, even if just for one night. In the US, particularly in Texas and California where Barrios has a strong following, younger fans began to rally behind their fighter. They saw him as a humble, hard-working athlete who had paid his dues and deserved this moment. His Mexican-American heritage also brought in a passionate fan base who recognized his grit and willingness to face top-tier competition. The boxing world, known for its unpredictable twists, began to analyze the matchup more closely. Analysts debated whether Pacquiao's speed could still trouble a young fighter like Barrios. Some believed the experience gap was too vast, that Pacquiao's ring generalship, ability to read opponents, and adapt mid-fight would neutralize Barrios' physical advantages. Others argued that the age difference, nearly 15 years, was a massive hurdle, especially in a sport where milliseconds matter. They pointed to the Ugas fight, where Pacquiao looked slower and less reactive than usual. Critics wondered if a 2-year layoff, no matter how legendary the fighter, could be overcome against an opponent in his prime. At the same time, former fighters and trainers offered insight into how each man could approach the bout. For Pacquiao, the keys would be angles, speed bursts, and maintaining pressure. He would need to make Barrios uncomfortable early, disrupt his rhythm, and avoid standing in front of the younger man for too long. For Barrios, the game plan seemed clear: keep Pacquiao at bay with his jab, control the distance, and use his height and reach to his advantage. He'd have to resist the urge to brawl and stay disciplined, knowing that one mistake against someone as experienced as Pacquiao could prove costly. Amidst all this buildup, press conferences and media events brought the two fighters face to face. The tension wasn't hostile, it was respectful, but intense. Pacquiao, smiling as always, spoke about how much he loved boxing and how this fight was for the fans. He reiterated that he wasn't chasing titles but was fighting for the love of the sport. Barrios, dressed in simple attire and speaking with calm assurance, said he had trained for war and that he wasn't coming to be part of a farewell celebration, he was coming to win. These exchanges added depth to the story, painting a picture of two men from different generations meeting at a crossroads. As the fight drew nearer, betting odds fluctuated. Initially, many oddsmakers favored Barrios due to his youth, size, and recent activity. However, as training footage of Pacquiao circulated and fans reminisced about his past achievements, money began pouring in for the Filipino legend. The narrative shifted once again. Could Pacquiao turn back the clock? Would this be another miracle chapter in an already unbelievable career? Or would this be the moment where time finally caught up to him? Online platforms lit up with fan theories and predictions. Some saw a late stoppage by Barrios, citing Pacquiao's age and possible ring rust. Others envisioned Pacquiao outboxing his younger foe with combinations and footwork. Memes, highlight reels, and emotional tributes flooded TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Young boxing fans argued with older generations in comment sections, creating a virtual arena of opinions. On Reddit boxing forums, long threads dissected the matchup down to every detail: foot positioning, punch stats, historical trends, and psychological pressure. Perhaps one of the most touching aspects of this build-up was the way both fighters carried themselves. There was no trash talk, no stage drama, no cheap hype. Instead, there was mutual respect and a shared understanding of what this fight meant, not just to them, but to the fans, to the sport, and to their respective communities. This respectful tone resonated with boxing purists, many of whom had grown tired of loud promotional gimmicks. They appreciated that this was a real fight, between two real fighters, each trying to write their own story. By the week of the fight, anticipation reached a fever pitch. Media outlets around the world sent crews to cover the weigh-in, open workouts, and final interviews. At the final face-off, the tension was palpable. Pacquiao, smaller but solid, stared into the eyes of a man who had grown up watching him. Barrios, towering and focused, met his gaze not as a fan, but as an equal. It was a symbolic moment, two eras colliding in one ring. For Pacquiao, this was a chance to defy time. For Barrios, it was a chance to become timeless. Fight night arrived with a sense of electricity that only boxing at its best can deliver. The crowd buzzed with excitement, and although the venue was packed with people from all walks of life, there was a unified energy that pulsed through the arena. For many in attendance, this wasn't just another boxing match, it was history in the making. Fans waved flags, wore t-shirts bearing their favorite fighter's name, and recorded videos as they waited for the walkouts. The announcers' voices rang out through the stadium as the undercard bouts wrapped up. All eyes turned to the tunnel where Manny Pacquiao, wearing his signature warm-up jacket and that ever-familiar expression of calm determination, prepared to make his entrance. As Pacquiao made his way to the ring, cheers erupted. Fans stood to their feet, chanting his name, reliving memories of past glories. The pounding of the drums in his walkout music blended with the pounding of hearts across the arena. Every step he took was symbolic. Not just of a fighter returning to the ring, but of a man returning to where he truly belonged. Across the tunnel, Mario Barrios stood equally ready, flanked by his team, his eyes focused, knowing this was the biggest night of his life. As he made his entrance, the cheers for him were loud and proud. He wasn't seen as a villain, he was the rising warrior, carrying the pride of his hometown and the hunger of youth. Inside the ring, the final instructions were given by the referee. As both men touched gloves, the contrast was striking. Pacquiao, the compact, agile icon with decades of experience, stood face-to-face with Barrios, taller, younger, and physically. As the rounds progressed, the story of the fight began to unfold. Pacquiao, despite being 45, still possessed flashes of brilliance, his footwork, his head movement, the rhythm shifts that once baffled the likes of Cotto and Margarito. But the difference now was the recovery time. After quick bursts, he'd reset a little slower than before. Barrios, to his credit, remained composed. He took the punches, adjusted, and started targeting the body to slow Pacquiao down. He wasn't rushing things, he was fighting with maturity beyond his years. By round 5, the fight had turned into a chess match with bursts of violent exchanges. Pacquiao would dart in, land a flurry, and try to spin out. Barrios would absorb the shots and counter with straight punches, using his reach advantage. What was once expected to be a mismatch due to age or inexperience turned into a masterclass in adaptation and resilience. Commentators pointed out how Barrios was showing more patience than he had in previous fights, perhaps having learned valuable lessons from his losses. Meanwhile, Pacquiao's grit and ring generalship were on full display. He wasn't just surviving, he was competing. In round 7, a key moment occurred. Pacquiao feinted low, then landed a sharp left hand over the top that snapped Barrios' head back. The crowd erupted, sensing a momentum shift. For a few seconds, it felt like 2010 again, Pacquiao darting in, throwing combinations, forcing his opponent onto the back foot. But Barrios didn't fold. He weathered the storm, adjusted his guard, and fired back with a well-timed counter to the body. That punch slowed Pacquiao's flurry, reminding everyone that the younger man wasn't going anywhere. Rounds 8 and 9 became increasingly tactical. Pacquiao began to circle more, picking his spots, landing clean shots but in lower volume. Barrios took control of the center of the ring, pressing forward, jabbing to the head and body, occasionally landing with his straight right. Both men had their moments, and the crowd appreciated the technical brilliance on display. Unlike fights that are one-sided or dominated by physicality, this bout offered layers, strategy, adjustments, and moments of inspiration from both sides. Every round felt like a small story, each one adding to the larger picture of legacy versus future. By round 10, fatigue started to set in. For Pacquiao, the years and ring rust were now undeniable factors. He still had the heart, but his legs weren't as springy, and his punch volume dropped. Barrios sensed it and picked up the pace slightly, walking Pacquiao down, going to the body, and landing thudding shots that echoed through the arena. But even as he tired, Pacquiao never backed down. He'd return fire, biting down on his mouthpiece, throwing 3-punch combinations when most would throw one. That fighting spirit, that unwillingness to be outclassed, kept him competitive. In the championship rounds, rounds 11 and 12, both fighters emptied the tank. Barrios tried to assert dominance with controlled pressure, while Pacquiao dug deep, delivering a vintage rally. The exchanges were furious at times, left hooks, right hands, uppercuts thrown in close quarters. Sweat and determination filled the ring as the final bell approached. When it finally rang, both men embraced a long, respectful hug that encapsulated everything the fight stood for. It was about more than just winning. It was about respect, history, courage, and the undying love for the sport. As the scores were read, the crowd fell into a hush. The decision was close. Some rounds could have gone either way, and both fighters had strong moments. In the end, Mario Barrios was awarded a close but unanimous decision victory. There were no boos, no outrage, only applause. Even Pacquiao's most loyal fans stood and clapped, not just for the result, but for the fight, for the effort, and for the moment they had just witnessed. Barrios raised his hand, not in boastful celebration, but in quiet gratitude. He knew what he had just accomplished. Beating Pacquiao didn't make him greater than the legend, it made him part of the legend's story. Pacquiao, ever gracious, smiled during the post-fight interview. He congratulated Barrios, thanked the fans, and spoke of how blessed he felt to compete again. He didn't announce his retirement, but his words carried a tone of finality. "I gave everything," he said, "and I'm proud of what we did tonight." The crowd roared in approval. For many, the result didn't matter. What mattered was seeing Manny Pacquiao one last time, giving it everything, as he always had.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more exciting videos, make sure to hit the bell icon and stay updated. Subscribe to Boxing Hub now for all the latest in boxing.